I first came to the Physics Center in the summer of 1971. And at that time, we had two buildings, Stranahan and Hilbert, and lawn between them, and there's a large row of cottonwoods, big cottonwoods. And people would gather under the cottonwoods at noon in the middle of the day, where it was shady, and talk. And one of the very first conversations I had was when the women who were participants at the Physics Center started to accumulate under the cottonwood trees. And I met Frida Saltzman, who, with her husband George, were both participants. They're both theoretical physicists. And one of the things that I learned even in that first conversation was that Frida had always been considered the better of the two. I think she didn't put it so bluntly, but she had always been a non-faculty member while her husband was a faculty member. And they had actually sued one of the universities where he was a faculty member and she had not been given a faculty position, and won. On the strength of her reputation, her publications, and testimony from physicists. So she had gone through a lot more as a woman physicist than I ever had to. However, when I was a graduate student, certainly when I was an undergraduate student, and for some time after I graduated, so during the 70s, about 1 in 40 physicists was a woman. And at the time that I got my PhD. It was actually awarded in 1971, though I'd finished my work a year earlier. It was possible for me to name everyone in theoretical particle physics, all the females. There were, at first there were 5 that I could name, and then pretty soon there were 13. And I could still tell you who all of them were. They've all gone on to be very prominent, successful physicists, and there were really very few of us. So in that first conversation, I met Frida Saltzman and Natasha Meshkov, who was a nuclear theorist, and I'm trying to think, Grace Spruck. I know I met her that first summer. I'm not sure whether she was in that conversation, plus a couple of other postdocs. And I was so impressed that at this physics center, which did not have nearly as many participants as it has now, there were women. Some of them were couples. They had desks, and they obviously were very integral in the physics center. And I think that it was actually close to 10% of the participation through the 70s, because I used to check every summer. About 10% of the participants were women. So I asked these women whether they'd always found the Physics Center friendly, because they had been here before I had. And they said yes. And what was interesting to me was that they gave both George Stranahan and my husband credit for being so welcoming to both women and couples. And one of them said that when Randy became president, and before that he had been chair of the admissions committee, that he had been really delighted to accept, to sending them their acceptance, and really delighted that they had participated. And I thought, well, I certainly picked a winner. So I always felt welcome at the Physics Center, and I think that I got involved immediately in the work of the center, partly because my husband was not a founder, but he had been here from the very beginning, from the first year, and he was very involved, and I wanted to help. The sorts of things that I did were, I was chair of buildings and grounds one time, and actually it was a time when we had just built Beta Hall, and we got to order new furniture. So I went over to the Institute and asked to borrow some catalogs and asked them what furniture had been satisfactory for them. We actually got to order some new desks and chairs. And when I sit in this room that we're sitting in right now, and I see that most of the furniture in here is brand new, I'm very impressed still, because before Beta Hall was built, I think that we scrounged furniture. We had work parties and painted furniture, for example. So that was one of the things that I did. Another thing that I did was take over the ordering of books for the library for several years. I organized work parties. I did just any number of things, pitching in on whatever needed to be done. But the Physics Center was still, some people called it an old boys club. And the old boys were the people who had been here from the beginning, a lot of them from the 60s. And I don't think that they ever have intended, and I'm sure that they would say this, I don't think that they have ever intended for themselves to be perceived as exclusive. But it was pretty conspicuous that even though we had about, I'd say on the order of 8 to 12% women participants, no one was a trustee member. In those days, you were, if you were a member, you were also a trustee, until 1980. And in 1980, the University of Wisconsin, where I'm a professor of physics, hosted the 20th International Conference in High Energy Physics. And I had a leadership role in that. I was not one of the co-chairs, but I did have a leadership role in that. I don't know whether my involvement with this international conference triggered it or not, but in the summer of 1980, I got a call that I'd been nominated to be a member trustee of the Physics Center, and I was really thrilled. So I was a member trustee from 1980 to 86, and then again from 1990 to 2000. And shortly after 2000, I was made an honorary trustee, and I think that I'm probably the only honorary trustee who's never served as chair of the board or as president. But it was really a nice recognition for me to get to all of the work that I put into the Physics Center. Right. So Barbara.
Okay, yeah, so I first came to the Aspen Center for Physics in 1987, and I had just gotten my PhD. And when I came, I was one of the youngest people around. And when I arrived, I felt that my intimidation was not so much as being a woman as simply being one of the younger people among all these extremely august physicists, many of whom I recognized by name only and then got to meet. And I was so pleasantly surprised that I was not only not shunned because of my relative junior status, but I was invited to give an informal presentation in the workshop that was going on. I participated in many very fruitful discussions. There was no apparent grouping or distinguishing that I had just about to start my postdoc, and others, of course, were already full professors. I thought that it was, in fact, a very welcoming environment. I, in fact, had such a very satisfying time. I got so much work done. I had so many fruitful discussions that I have come virtually every summer since, including one summer where I had to finance it entirely out of pocket because the postdoc that I was on could only pay for either the March meeting or Aspen. And I did some rough calculation and thought, well, perhaps it's best they pay for the March meeting and I'll do Aspen. At that point, I was only coming by myself. At this point, I come with a family of three, my husband and my son as well, and the calculation would have balanced the other way these days, but at this point. So I went to the Aspen Center for Physics all through my early days. I started work at IBM in 1989, and in 1994, I was asked to become a general member, and that was in fact the same year that I coincidentally was asked to become a manager at IBM. And I thought it was kind of an interesting year. I was also married that year, and we also bought a house that year. So 1994 was quite a good year. And with all that going on, asked to become a member, I just thought, well, okay, one more thing. I'm glad to serve. I had already been coming for a significant number of years at that point. I had felt that I really wanted to become more involved with the center and learn more about how things worked, and maybe have a hand in how some of things worked, the summer workshops, the winter workshops. And I haven't been disappointed. I've been a member since then, and during that time, I have served on virtually all of the main committees. I've been involved in the summer workshops. I chaired that one year. I was on the winter workshops one year. I did nominations committee. I chaired that one year. I've been on the committee for the Treasury, whatever it's called. I've done a number of things. The only thing I have not yet done is admissions, but of all the different things, and I've been very pleased with how things were run. In 1996, I became a trustee, and my opinion of the center did not change from that. In fact, it if anything, improved. I compared how some of the meetings that I went to as a manager at IBM, and I love working at IBM, and not to dissuade that, but the amount of work that got done with just these 2 yearly meetings was phenomenal to me. That agendas were set and the agenda items went through, and except for emails throughout the year, these were the July meeting and the August meeting, these were the time when people got together, and by golly, things got done. And I was in fact very pleased with how those meetings were run, how to me it seemed everybody got a chance to speak and have their voice heard, that in particular a frequent complaint that women have is that they will say something and it seems to fall on infertile ground and then be picked up again by a man sometime later and celebrated as the key thought of the meeting. I never noticed that really too much happening at these meetings, and I was very pleased with that. The things I said, things that other people said, things Bernice said, things Karin said, or others of the women, if they were a good point, they were followed up on, and I was very pleased. So my experiences as a female participant at the center have been extremely positive. I found this to be a very welcoming place to do physics, a good place to do physics, a place where I have not felt really at any time that I have been discriminated against or treated less well because I've been female. So I've been very pleased. In 1997, I had a son was born. And so then my trips to Aspen became suddenly much more complex. I continued to come. My son was born on July 1st, so that was 1 year I had to skip. That was just too complicated. I couldn't travel just before, and within the first few months of his being born, I certainly couldn't travel then either. But the following year brought him when he was barely a year old. And the way I personally handled that was that we had a full-time nanny at home because both myself and my husband work full-time, and we had it in her contract that, although she wouldn't have to do any other travel for us, that she would have to come with us to the Aspen Center for Physics. So in our employment contract with the nannies was the Aspen Center for Physics, that she would have to travel with us, and she should not come and agree to be employed by us unless she would agree to come for 3 weeks and be the nanny. So we went through succession of nannies, as people do. It was really a revolving door. They're really but each one came, and so that's how we handled that. And then at about age 5 or 6, we discovered, well, as recommended to us, the Aspen Snowmass Camp. And our son really fit in well there with their outdoor activities. We come from California, and he was used to doing outdoor activities there too, and so all the things. So that's how we've slowly gone away from bringing a nanny with us to now full-time our son goes to the Aspen Snowmass Camp. And now the only challenge remaining was to persuade my husband to come each and every year. Unlike many female physicists, I do not have a husband who is in physics. He is, in fact, a psychologist, a psychoanalyst. And so he is somebody that you don't work, you don't get paid. So he doesn't get vacation pay. So you were away for too long, the patients stop coming. So it's then loss of income in the future too. So I had to do a balancing act of persuading him to come. And luckily, I took him on some key hikes that he really found enchanting. And I persuaded him so that now he says, as March is coming, boy, I'm really looking forward to going to Aspen this year. Getting away and doing those hikes, is going to be a really nice break. So I consider that a major victory. So that now my husband is the one who's encouraging us, let's make our plane reservations early and get going, because this is something he really looks forward to doing each year. So my experiences overall have been very positive.
That's great. Karin?
Okay, well, I actually have some similar stories and some that are a little different. So the first time that I heard of Aspen was when I was an undergraduate at Princeton. And at graduation, the physics department had a party, and my mom was talking to Sam Treman, who is a well-known particle physicist who is one of my professors at Princeton. And she asked him, "What are you doing this summer?" And he said, "I'm going to the Aspen Center for Physics." And she said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "Oh, it's a summer camp for physicists." So I thought, actually, even though I've been here now many years, I think that's a very good description of what Aspen is like. The second time I was involved with Aspen was when Greg Moore, my husband, came by himself in 1986. And he called me from his apartment on Shadow Mountain and was telling me about the stars and what a magical place this was. And I built up a picture in my mind of this magical place, which, imagination is a great thing. And I came the following year, 1987, as a spouse. So I didn't have an official standing at the center, and I wasn't allowed to be here during the day because we still have rules that spouses and families aren't allowed to come during the day. So I would come around 6 o'clock and work in the library and check my email. I don't know, maybe not check my email, I don't remember, on the computer. And we would work until about midnight and cycle home. But I really found it to be a very magical place, and there's just something so special and unique about working here in the mountains and getting together with other physicists. So I think it was the following year that I applied, and to my great astonishment, I actually got in, because partly because I'm in a field, computational materials physics, which is not strongly represented at the center, and there's never been a workshop here in this field except for the 2 workshops that I organized or helped to organize. So I'm one of the people who comes to the center, and there's a small number of them every year, just to work on our own, to enjoy the beautiful surroundings, the relative peace, being away from home and being able to concentrate on a physics project or a writing project, and really to be able to get things done in this beautiful, magical setting. So, not to go on too long, but then
you have a child now, right?
Right. But I became a member first, in fact. So we also, when you're a participant, you don't really see so much of how the center works, but little by little, you start to understand that the center is really a place where the members, the physicists, make the place. They put in all the work for no pay, no reward, except for the privilege of coming to Aspen and being part of this very special community of people. And so in 1995, when I got tenure at Yale, that was also the year that I was asked to become a member, and I was very excited about being more involved and becoming a part of this place. And having to come every summer, that's a really onerous duty. And one of the things that I think really improved my understanding of the center was being on the admissions committee the first year that I was a member. And it was in Santa Cruz. Howie Haber was the chair. And we had a dinner. It was really hard work. The admissions committee is several days away from home. And we work from morning till late at night. But then you go out to dinner at a nice restaurant and relax after the work is over. And it was Pierre Ramond who instilled in the group an idea that Aspen is what we make it. And that if you see something that needs doing, you should just do it and not wait around for someone to ask you, but just look for ways that you can make this make this a better place. And so that's one of the reasons why, and I'm now 10 years a member. One of the things I really enjoy about Aspen is the opportunity to do things that make a difference. And for example, my work on the library committee, it was kind of scary to make such a radical change in the library as we did, to cancel all the journals and to move over to a modern library which relies much more on electronic resources. And I knew that a lot of people thought that wasn't a very good idea, but we did it, and I think it turns out in the end that it is a good idea. So I'll just say a couple of words about my experiences as half of a physics couple and now as a mother. So we've always come to the center together, and one of the good things about not being in a field that has workshops is that we now don't have to rely on having workshops at the same time. We come for the string theory workshops, since my husband is a string theorist, and then I do my thing during the string theory workshop while I'm here. And it's great to come together and be away from home together and be working together in a different setting. Now, I think I should say a couple of words about the policy that this Center has for couples. There used to be on the sheet 3 choices when you were part of a physics couple. You could check a box that said, consider our applications separately. You could check a box the second box said, consider our applications jointly. That means either accept or not accept both of us. And the third was, consider our applications jointly and we're willing to share a desk. So so I think we usually put the third one and after I became a member, that was a custom because members get automatic admission. And so if I put jointly, then that would be not playing quite fair. So we would put jointly and we're willing to share a desk, although that was never a problem. I think Greg always was well able to get in on his own behalf. And then when we started coming with Andrew, my son, the first year we came, our timing was a little different from Barbara's. So Andrew was born in June, the beginning of June. And so he came that first summer. I came again as a spouse just for a week. And we brought Andrew to Aspen when he was 3 months old. And I just brought him round to the center to show all the people at the center and didn't do too much work that week. But I just wanted to bring him here and share my joy in having this wonderful baby. And so we've brought him with us every year and made some kinds of arrangements, usually local arrangements with babysitters and now at the camps. And we've taken him hiking every year and pushed him as hard as he can go. So this year he's riding a mountain bike around and he hiked up to Cathedral Lake with us this weekend. And so I look at the older physicist children, the ones that have come here every year and now are coming back to Aspen at college age or even older to be with their parents. And I'm really hoping that Andrew will be an Aspen kid and think of this place as a really special place too.
Oh, that's a wonderful story.
Yes.
Thank you both. I think one other thing I wanted to add was that I talked mostly about my involvement in pitching in, as Karin said, that if you see something that needs to be done, do it. But I also organized one workshop and I think co-organized another. I can't remember if it was 1 or 2 at this point. And I would say that the collaborations that got started here by being assigned to in a couple of cases, being assigned to an office with somebody that I didn't know, have been really wonderful for my career. I think that every physicist who comes here is going to tell you that it's been great for their professional standing, just getting the opportunity to talk informally and meet people and test out your ideas. When Randy and I were first both here, there was at least 1 year when we shared a desk also, and it might have been the first summer that I came. I think I applied that summer and they admitted both of us, but we did share a desk because the place was so crowded, which didn't bother me particularly. I just thought, well, there are too many people and better to share a desk with somebody you know than to share a desk with a stranger.
Yeah.
Because we were tripled up in offices and it was just really very crowded on space. But I think the couples policy developed over the years. And does it still have those 3 choices on it?
Well, Barbara and I were just trying to remember, because I looked this year and I think the willing to share a desk option has been removed. So there's we have now 2 choices. And it's true that even the years we said we're willing to share a desk, Sally and then Jane always made an effort to try to find 2 desks for us, if at all possible. So I really appreciated that.
I think that, I don't remember the exact statistics, but I think that something Barbara alluded to, about 40% of married women physicists are married to physicists. At one point, that was about the right number. And I think that I've always felt that it was quite natural to have physics couples around the center, and I really have enjoyed it. And I think it's a good role model for younger physicists, too. I was appointed member trustee in 1980, and the next women were added to, at that point, the bylaws had changed so that they were general members, and the members and trustees were then separate. The next 2 women were appointed in 1991. So there was a long period when I was the only woman on the board and the only woman really directly involved in the governance. After 1991, every year, essentially, more women were appointed as members, but really the participation of women in the governance did not nearly match the participation of women in the physics of the Physics Center. And two women, Liz Simmons and Catherine Callan, organized a focus week on women, which took place, I believe, when Tom Applequist was president. And they invited a whole lot. It was like throwing a party for all the women physicists you could think of. Plus, they invited sociologists who were specialists on women in math and science to talk also. It was a great success, and after that year, the number of women members burgeoned, and at this point, about 1/6 of the members, we were running in the 15, 16, 17% of members are women. And I think that most of the women on the members list and who've been trustees now have had sufficient experience that they are viable candidates to be president. So I don't think that there's going to be a glass ceiling on the presidency. Were you at that focus week also?
Yes, I found it wonderful. I found it wonderful too because I've been at other places where they've had such focus weeks, and sometimes such events end up trying to corral in women from here and there. And yet this focus week had so many women, and all of them were bona fide, top-notch physicists. And that's what I thought was really, really nice. And I just enjoyed, I'd heard some of these names, especially in other fields other than condensed matter, and enjoyed meeting them finally and talking to them. I thought it was just wonderful.
It was the largest group of women physicists I had ever been in. I don't know whether it was for you.
Yes, it was definitely for me.
But there was just, I mean, I had never been in a circle of women until we were out on the patio talking, where you could use physics jargon and female jargon and everybody got it. So, and you could make allusions to things that everyone got in both fields. And we did come out of that with a series of recommendations for the center, which they have stuck to really well, except for one, which was that we found the behavior during seminars pretty rude. And we recommended that people tone down their arguments and criticisms during seminars. And that stuck as long as the president put up a little sign or something, but it didn't stick for very long.
And one important thing was the introduction for at least the summer workshops of a person who was supposed to be the person in charge of making sure that outreach had been done in terms of soliciting people to apply for the workshop. That
Yes,
was
yes, we do now pay real attention to whether we have a balance of women, whether we seek out, whether we search for, not just let them come to us if they want to, that we actually look for both women and minority participants so that we have, we give people the opportunity who might not realize that they could have had the opportunity.